Conversations with Wall Street, the inside story of the financial Armageddon and how to prevent the next one, is a book about the Wall Street financial crisis and all of the members inside the industry in the mortgage markets, at the top investment banks, at the commercial banks, who were involved in the trading and sales of mortgage-backed securities that brought the market down in 2008.
Well, the crisis that happened in 2008 changed the industry in a pretty substantial way. And so right now there are a lot more people out of work looking for jobs. Yes, the online aspect of recruiting has had an impact, but I think the bigger impact was the fact that a lot of people lost their jobs and new jobs were not being created to help those people land.
There was a story about sardine Sam, and I think I'll let Peter talk to you about that, about what this particular man said, who was part of the real estate financing structure in New York. He structured the financing for every other building in New York. So that's pretty remarkable. I mean, he had a tremendous power in the real estate industry. And I would try to figure out what he was saying, and he was talking about morality. So I'll let Peter talk about that.
So this gentleman, as Monica said, financed every third building in New York City and quite a lot of other buildings throughout the country. And a couple of days after Lehman had gone bankrupt, he was in my office, and he was really, really, really angry. And he was talking about this is like bigger than an act of God. This is unbelievable. I was sucker punched. They knocked me out, but I'm not out of the game. And he was really, really upset. And I said to him, so how did this happen? I mean, Lehman's an institution. It was the fourth largest investment bank in the world. How could something like this happen? And he said, well, it's really the traders did it. He said, I see the value in real estate. I see the value in a corporate office. I see the value in a big building, the land and the people that spend time in there and work there. But all the traders care about is the paper that is attached, or the bonds that is attached to the loans that were made on that real estate. So all they care about is the spread is this, the spread is that. I can trade it here, I can trade it there, and they just want to keep going and going and going. And then he says to me, it's the sardine can story, Pete. Don't you ever hear the sardine can story? And I'm like, that's one I haven't heard.
How did he talk though? How did?
Well, he was a pretty rough and tumble, sort of Brooklyn. You ever hear the sardine can story, Pete? I mean, I can't believe you never heard of that story. And so I said, well, Sam, tell me the story. He said, I sell you a can of sardines for $3. You sell it to the next guy for $4. You sell it to the other guy for $5. He sells it to the next guy for $6. The guy that buys it for $6 opens up the can of sardines, and they're rotten. And that's when he says, these sardines were not meant to be eaten. They were meant to be traded.
Does Wall Street. So that's what, those were the notes that Peter would give me, piles of them, and I'd have to read all through these and try to figure out, what makes sense here, what kind of theme are we coming up with. And this extraordinary story came out of it, the story about people that were really human, that drive the markets and drove the markets down, and why it happened. And how, in some ways, they were as much victimized by the system that they couldn't control, that was out of control, as anyone else, because they were on a treadmill running right over the edge of the cliff. So
I'm the storyteller, so I sat with a lot of these guys, and they told me things like, the mortgage markets are the same thing as selling tomatoes that are worth 23 cents for $23. They told me, Monica and I would sit down and I would go through these stories and explain what these guys were saying to me, and then we would both discuss the ramifications in the meeting. So she's tend to look at these issues from 30,000 feet, and I was on the ground dealing with these guys on a daily basis. So it actually worked out really well.
I was very frustrated with them the whole way through. He'd hand me piles of notes like this big and say, here, these are my interviews. And I would have to make a structure and try to figure out what to do with them, what chapter they would go in, what was the underlying value of them. I mean, some of the stories were so incredible.
Thank you for listening. Please review our other available content for help writing, publishing, and marketing your book. If you have any questions about the Author Learning Center, please contact us by email at authorsupport at authorlearningcenter.com.